"Stop the car!" Daniel King shouted. The tires screeched to a halt. The cameras were rolling. His security team stood frozen. The crowd behind the velvet ropes was already whispering. On the cold, cracked pavement of downtown Houston, Daniel pointed toward the homeless man sitting silently on the corner, dressed in rags, his long dreadlocks draped over his shoulders, holding a piece of cardboard that simply read, "Don't judge what you never bothered to know." Daniel King, the billionaire real estate mogul, known for his viral social experiments, stormed across the street and yanked the cardboard from the man's lap. "You're the one they've been talking about," he scoffed, turning to the camera. "Perfect." Then Daniel clapped his hands once, loud, sharp, like thunder cracking in a quiet church. That's when the trap began. Two of his assistants wheeled over a fancy dining table, complete with white cloth, gold-plated cutlery, and steaming gourmet dishes. A violinist began to play. Onlookers gasped. Some laughed. Others just pulled out their phones. "I want the world to see how generosity works," Daniel declared, forcing a smile. "I'm going to give this man a $100,000 check if he passes one simple test." The crowd grew louder, but the homeless man said nothing. Daniel leaned in close to him, almost whispering, "This is how the internet eats, old man. You either take the bait or disappear back into the shadows." The camera zoomed in, and then, just as Daniel pulled out the golden envelope, a woman's scream cut through the air. The homeless man had stood up, but not like someone weak, trembling, or desperate. No, he stood like a soldier, straight back, chin up, eyes fierce, like he had stood before kings before. And then, in a voice that sounded like thunder wrapped in silk, he said, "You know exactly who I am, Daniel King. Or did prison wipe your memory clean?" The crowd went dead silent. Daniel froze. The homeless man took a step forward. "Or should I say, brother?" Gasps. Real sharp ones. The camera wobbled. A baby started crying. Daniel's mouth fell open. But before anyone could react, he collapsed, and the screen went black. 3 weeks earlier, life was calm in Houston. Calm but cruel. Emmanuel Manny Carter had slept the night before on the cold steps of an abandoned church. He always picked that spot, not because it was safe, but because the light from the broken stained glass reminded him of his mom. She used to sing inside churches just like that one. Her voice was honey and fire. Gone now, 10 years this August. The mornings were always the hardest. You wake up cold, hungry, and invisible. Manny knew he looked like the rest, filthy, forgotten. But he wasn't like the rest. Not really. Not that anyone cared to know. Every day, he made his rounds, collected what little he could. Mostly he avoided trouble, especially from the cops and boys in red trucks who liked to play kick the bum. He never begged, never asked for money, just held up his sign. "Don't judge what you never bothered to know." Most people ignored it. Until her. Lily Ramirez. About 17. Sharp eyes. Tattoo on her wrist that read hope in cursive. She passed him every morning on her way to work at the diner. Most people walked around him. She walked right by him. Every day. Like clockwork. But then, one morning, she stopped. "Hey, you okay?" Manny looked up, surprised. She handed him a coffee and a bagel. "Warm. Real warm. No cream," she said. "Didn't know if you liked that." He blinked. "Thanks," he muttered. "Your sign," she said, pointing. "It's true. Most people don't care to know. But I do." That small moment cracked something open in Manny's chest, like a forgotten door, rusty and locked, suddenly creaking open again. She started sitting with him on her lunch breaks. Sometimes they talked. Mostly she asked questions. Not like a reporter, but like someone who actually cared. "What's your story?" He always gave the same answer. "Not for this street." "Where then?" she asked once. "Where there's time." And silence. But time wasn't on his side. 3 days after that, Daniel King returned to Houston. The internet was already buzzing. Hashtag King returns. Hashtag Billionaire Challenge. He had promised a new series where he changed lives of less fortunate people. But everyone knew what that really meant. Public stunts. Painful tests. Emotional traps that made people cry on camera for likes and sponsors. And this time, Daniel was hunting for the right homeless person. He sent scouts, paid photographers, bribed city workers. Then he found the cardboard sign, and something about it rattled him. He ordered a meeting in private with his team. "This man," he said, holding up the photo. "Find him. Now." "But why him?" asked one assistant. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the photo, long and hard. Then he whispered to himself, "No way he's still alive." 2 days later, Daniel rolled into downtown with a truckload of cameras, influencers, security, and set designers. And within minutes, he found Manny. The trap was set. That brings us back to the start, to the table, to the crowd, to the moment when the world paused, to the moment when the homeless man stood and called the millionaire brother. And now, Daniel's collapsed on the sidewalk. The homeless man dropped to his knees beside him, but not to help. He leaned close, his voice a whisper. "You always said you'd rather die than face the truth. Don't you dare make that choice now." Daniel's eyes flickered open barely. One word croaked from his lips. "Why?" And just as Manny opened his mouth to speak, a gunshot rang out. Everyone screamed. People ducked. And Manny was no longer there. Screams echoed through the street as people scattered. Phones dropped. A baby stroller rolled into the curb, its wheels spinning helplessly. Somewhere behind the chaos, the violinist tripped and crashed into the table, sending gold cutlery flying like shrapnel. But no one cared. All eyes were on the spot where the homeless man had stood. Gone. Vanished. Like smoke. Daniel King lay flat on the sidewalk, barely conscious. One of his assistants knelt beside him, trying to keep his head still, yelling into a walkie-talkie. "We need medics. Now." Blood? No. No blood. No bullet wound. The gunshot hadn't hit him. But where was it aimed? And more importantly, where was he? The cameras were still rolling. Thousands watched live on Daniel's social media feed. Millions more would by morning. "Did he just say brother?" A man whispered. I think he knew Daniel. No way, he looked homeless. As medics rushed in, cutting through the crowd with a stretcher, somewhere 3 rooftops above, a figure crouched low behind a steel vent, pulling a battered hoodie tight over his dreadlocks. Manny didn't blink. He just stared down, watching the scene below like it was a stage, and the actors had forgotten their lines. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the memory. That sound, that gunshot, it was the same sound he heard 12 years ago, the night everything changed. He closed his eyes and let the memory take him back. They were just kids, 15 and 18. Daniel had the looks, the ambition, the words. Manny had the quiet fire, the strength, the brain for numbers. They didn't share a last name, but they shared everything else. Same mother, different fathers. One black, one white, one born into favor, one into silence. When their mother died in that car crash, everything shattered. Daniel was taken in by his wealthy father's family. Manny wasn't even invited to the funeral. No explanation, no goodbye, no inheritance, just silence. And Manny, he disappeared into the system. But the worst betrayal wasn't being forgotten. It was what happened 3 years later. Daniel had started rising fast, investment deals, magazine covers, building his young genius reputation. But behind the scenes, he was moving money in ways the law wouldn't allow. And when the feds came knocking, Daniel made a choice. He framed someone, a scapegoat, someone with no name, no lawyer, no rich daddy. He framed Manny. Manny served 5 years in a private prison for a white-collar crime he didn't commit. By the time he got out, the world had already accepted Daniel as a mogul, a mastermind, a hero. And Manny, he had a rap sheet, no ID, and a story no one believed. So he vanished into the streets. And now, 12 years later, fate had brought them face to face. Manny hadn't expected the recognition. He thought Daniel wouldn't remember him, or maybe hoped. But when their eyes met, Daniel knew. And the gunshot, that wasn't part of the plan. Manny wasn't the only one watching Daniel that day. Later that night, Lily sat alone on the diner steps, staring at the news on her phone. Homeless man exposes billionaire on live TV. Who is he? And why did Daniel King collapse? Everyone was talking about it. TikTok clips, Instagram reposts, heated YouTube debates. But all Lily could see was Manny's eyes. He looked different. Not like a beggar. Not like someone broken. He looked like someone betrayed. She tapped the video again. Watched it for the 10th time. You know exactly who I am, Daniel King. Or should I say, brother? Her eyes widened. Brother? She remembered what Manny once said. Not for this street. Now she understood. She grabbed her coat and raced down the alley, past the old theater, across the footbridge, toward the only place she thought he might go. The church. The one with the broken stained glass. It was quiet when she got there. No one around, except for a single paper bag on the steps. Inside was a sandwich, still warm, and beside it a slip of paper. On it was a name, Edward Slade. She had no idea who that was, but Manny had left it for her. That meant it mattered. She looked up at the city skyline, heart racing. Manny, she whispered. What are you doing? Manny walked the train tracks on the east side of the city, away from lights, cameras, and the noise of the online world. He knew it wouldn't be long before Daniel's people started looking for him. Or worse, those who wanted to keep the real truth buried. That gunshot, it wasn't random. Someone else knew who he was. Someone didn't want this story coming out. As he passed an old freight car, a voice echoed from the shadows. You shouldn't have shown your face. Manny stopped. I had to. You've just made yourself a target, and you've put him in danger. Manny turned. A tall man stepped into the moonlight. Sharp suit, scar across his lip, eyes like ice. Edward Slade. Manny didn't flinch. Daniel deserves the truth, even if it breaks him. Slade shook his head slowly. He's not the one I'm worried about. There was silence between them, thick and sharp. Then Slade pulled a folder from his coat and tossed it at Manny's feet. What's this? Manny asked. Slade stared at him. The real trap. The one Daniel doesn't even know he's in. Manny bent down and picked up the folder. He opened it. His face changed. First confusion, then shock, then pure, bone-deep fear. Slade leaned close. This isn't just about revenge, Manny. You stumbled into something bigger. And now, a single car screeched in the distance. Lights. Voices. Slade's eyes flashed. They found you. Before Manny could react, floodlights cut through the night. Sirens blared, and a booming voice shattered the silence. Step away from the suspect, and put your hands where we can see them. Manny looked left. Right. Slade was gone. Like smoke. Again. Just like Manny had been earlier. And now, alone in the center of the tracks, folder in hand, Manny raised his arm slowly, as half a dozen red dot sights locked onto his chest. Don't shoot. Manny yelled, raising the folder high above his head. I'm unarmed. The floodlights burned his eyes. Shadows darted across the broken rails as officers in tactical vests swarmed in. Boots thudded hard against metal. Guns glinted under the moon. A helicopter roared overhead, its spotlight locked onto him like a hawk eyeing prey. One cop grabbed him, twisting his arms behind his back, yanking the folder from his grip. We got him. The man barked into his radio. Target secured. Subject unarmed but considered dangerous. What the hell are you talking about? Manny shouted. I didn't do anything. Another officer shoved him to the ground. A knee pressed into his spine. He gritted his teeth, refusing to cry out. He'd been here before. Thrown down. Judged. Labeled. Before the truth even had a chance to breathe. As the zip tie cut into his wrists, Manny looked up, just in time to see the folder slip from the cop's hand and land in a puddle of oil and rainwater. The top page flipped open. A photo of Daniel, shaking hands with a man Manny had never seen before. And in the background, a prison. The very same one Manny had rotted in for 5 years. 6 hours later, Lily paced back and forth in the diner kitchen, phone in hand, waiting for anyone to answer. Pick up, she whispered. Please. She was the only one left in the building. The fryers had been cleaned. The chairs flipped upside down on tables. A clock ticked too loudly above the fridge. She hadn't eaten all day. All she could think about was that name. Edward Slade. She'd spent hours trying to search it. News articles, property records, even old case files. Something deep in the internet finally turned up a clue. Slade had once worked in federal private prisons as head of internal security. But 10 years ago, he vanished. No explanation. No trace. No obituary. Nothing. Like someone had erased him. She sat down hard on a stool, eyes wide. Private prisons. Daniel. Framed charges. Manny. Oh my God, she whispered. Her fingers danced across the keyboard. Billionaire Daniel King. Investments in correctional real estate. Her heart dropped. It was all there, buried in the fine print of shell companies. Daniel had been funneling money into prison infrastructure for years. But not just any prisons. The very ones where Manny had been locked up. The trap Manny mentioned, it wasn't just personal. It was systemic. Daniel had helped build the very machine that chewed up people like his own brother and made him rich in the process. Lily stood, clutching the note Manny had left behind. I have to get him out, she muttered. She didn't know how. Not yet. But she knew where she had to go. Downtown Houston, at a luxury penthouse. Daniel King stared out the window, pale and shaking, hooked up to a drip. His assistant, Anna, stood behind him, watching him carefully. You're lucky, she said. They said your collapse wasn't cardiac. Just shock. Dehydration. Stress. Daniel didn't respond. He hadn't said a word since he woke up. Anna sighed. You need to go public. Control the story before it controls you. Finally, Daniel turned. Slowly. His eyes were glassy, confused. But something else flickered behind them. A kind of distant terror. He said, Daniel's voice cracked. He said I was his brother. Anna hesitated. Was he telling the truth? Daniel looked away. I don't know. But he did. Every word of it. Every lie. Every forged document. Every time he turned his face away from the boy who used to call him Dan. He gripped the arm of the leather chair, so hard his knuckles turned white. If this gets out, Anna whispered, you're finished. The board will drop you. Stocks will crash. They'll pull your contracts from the prison deals. You'll be. I know, Daniel snapped. Then softer, I know. Anna crossed her arms. Then you better make him disappear. Daniel stared at her. You mean kill him? Anna raised one eyebrow. I didn't say that. Daniel turned to the window again, but in the glass, he didn't see himself. He saw Manny, bleeding, alone, silent, just like the last time. Manny sat in a holding cell beneath the city courthouse. No shoes, no phone call, no name tag, just a number. The folder they had taken from him had disappeared. No questions were asked, no rights read, and not a single cop had spoken his name. It was like he didn't exist. Again, until a voice echoed outside the bars. You made quite the scene. Manny looked up sharply. Edward Slade stood in the hallway, dressed like a janitor, pushing a mop bucket. Manny rushed to the bars, whispering, What are you doing here? You left me. Slade didn't look up. I left because I had to draw their eyes off you. You're alive because I made them look at me. I'm in a cell, and not a body bag, Slade said calmly. Manny stepped back, breathing hard. What's the plan? Slade glanced down the hall. There's a car waiting. It'll be in the alley behind this building in 15 minutes. They'll never let me out of here, Manny hissed. You're right, Slade said, pulling a small object from his pocket and sliding it across the floor. It was a key card. Manny stared. Slade smirked. Not every door is locked with a key. Then he turned to leave. Manny picked up the card, heart pounding. The hallway lights flickered once, twice. Then everything went dark. A moment later, a fire alarm exploded into the silence. Sprinklers rained from the ceiling. Sirens. Shouting. Footsteps pounding. In the chaos, Manny slid the keycard into the slot by his cell. It clicked. The door opened. He ran. Down the hallway. Past the lockers. Through the emergency exit. Out into the alley, into the night. And straight into Lily's car. Get in, she yelled. pulling the passenger door open. How? I tracked your arrest. Long story. Get in. He jumped in, and she floored it. They peeled off into the darkness, tires screaming. But they hadn't gone 3 blocks before Lily slammed the brakes. Standing in the middle of the road was Daniel King. Alone. No guards. No cameras. Just him. His eyes locked with Manny's. Then he held up a flash drive and mouthed 2 words. Lily's hands clenched the steering wheel. Her foot hovered above the gas pedal. The engine rumbled softly beneath them, like it was waiting to bolt. Manny stared at Daniel, unblinking. Rain began to fall in soft sheets, blurring the streetlights and casting a ghostly glow around Daniel's silhouette. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just held out the flash drive like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What is he doing? Lily whispered. Is this a trap? It's not, Manny said without looking away. Look at his face. She did. Daniel King didn't look like a man in control. He looked like a man unraveling, shivering, soaked, and haunted. Manny stepped out of the car, ignoring Lily's protest. He walked toward the man who had once called him brother, and later made him disappear. Step by step, until they stood only a foot apart. Daniel lowered the flash drive into Manny's palm. His fingers lingered for a moment, trembling. I lied to everyone, Daniel whispered. I ruined your life. I told myself you were already lost, that you wouldn't come back. Manny's eyes narrowed. Why now? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because it's bigger than you and me. What I did what they did. That prison you went to. It wasn't just for inmates. It was for money. And they kept me rich by keeping men like you locked up. Manny gripped the flash drive tighter. What's on this? He asked. Daniel's voice dropped, barely audible. Everything. Back at the diner, the power was out. Lily and Manny sat at a booth by the window. Laptop open between them. The flash drive plugged in. The storm outside made the glass shudder every few seconds. Streetlights flickered. Somewhere down the block, a transformer sparked blue against the sky. They waited. Files loaded slowly, dozens of them. Spreadsheets. Contracts. Secret communications. One folder stood out. Project Widowgate. Manny clicked it open. Inside were documents, signed by Daniel, yes, but also by others. Judges. Wardens. Investors. One memo made Lily gasp. For every minority male inmate admitted under low-grade charges, we receive $8,750 per quarter. Incentivize county enforcement. Use AI pre-screening to identify likely future offenders from school and social media records. Early placement yields higher profits over time. Discretion encouraged. Manny's throat went dry. Jesus, he breathed. They were targeting kids. Lily covered her mouth. This is genocide in slow motion. And then worse. A series of signed arrest requests. One name appeared multiple times. Emmanuel Carter. And next to each one, an approval signature. Daniel King. Manny stood up so fast the laptop nearly flew off the table. I'm gonna kill him. No, Lily said quickly. Not like that. If you do that, they'll spin the story. They'll bury you again. You'll just be another angry statistic. I am a statistic, he snapped. No, she said firmly, standing. You're proof. You're the story. You survived. They can't bury that. His hands shook. Then what? What do we do now? Lily hesitated, then opened her bag and pulled out a small voice recorder. I have an idea. 2 nights later, a live stream titled Confession of a King hit the internet. It didn't start with music or effects or a brand logo. Just a close-up of Daniel in his penthouse, alone. No makeup, no suit, just a trembling man looking directly into the camera. My name is Daniel King, he began, voice cracking, and I have something to confess. He told everything. The lies, the setup, his brother, the prison, the money, names, places, documents. He didn't spare himself. I deserve everything coming to me, he said, but Emmanuel Carter deserves his life back. And then, for the final 2 minutes, Manny appeared beside him. Live. He didn't speak at first. Just sat. Breathing. Existing. Real. I never wanted revenge, Manny said finally. I wanted to be seen, to be heard. And for every other man they buried under numbers and lies, I want them heard too. The video ended, and the world exploded. The next morning, hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Widowgate. Hashtag Justice for Manny. Hashtag Shut Them Down. Hashtag Brothers Uncovered. Protests filled the streets in dozens of cities. Government agencies scrambled to respond. Several judges named in the files resigned within hours. The Department of Justice announced an emergency task force. And Daniel, he was arrested. Voluntarily. He didn't resist. He gave the media one last quote as they cuffed him. I don't want forgiveness. I want this stopped. Manny walked alone through the broken stained-glass church one last time. He found the corner he used to sleep in. The shadows were still there, but they felt lighter somehow. A breeze passed through the cracked window, and in it, he could almost hear his mother's voice. Don't let them define you, baby. Tell your story, even if it shakes the earth. He smiled, then turned and stepped back into the world. But just as he reached the street, a black car pulled up slowly beside him. The window rolled down. Inside, Edward Slade. I told you this was bigger than just Daniel, Slade said. Manny stared. I thought it was over. Slade shook his head. You exposed one piece of the puzzle, but there's something else. Something Daniel never knew. He leaned forward. There's another man. Behind all of it. The one who built the system. And he's still out there. Manny's heart skipped. Slade held up a photo. A face Manny hadn't seen in years. Then he whispered the name. And Manny's knees nearly buckled. It was the face of a man who had once handed him candy at his mother's funeral, who had hugged Daniel tightly while pretending Manny didn't exist. Daniel's father, William King. And before Manny could speak, Slade said. Manny stood frozen on the sidewalk, the photo trembling in his hand. The man in the picture stared back at him with the cold eyes of a ghost from a past he'd tried to forget. William King, Daniel's father. The man who'd called Manny that mistake at their mother's funeral. The man who had locked arms with Daniel while pretending Manny wasn't even there. His voice echoed in Manny's memory like venom in silk. You don't belong in our world, son. Slade leaned across the car window, his face unreadable. He never left the picture. Daniel was just a frontman. William's the architect, the real king. He built Widowgate long before Daniel ever touched a contract. He's the one who gave it teeth. Manny couldn't breathe for a moment. He's alive, he managed to say. Slade nodded. And watching. Closely. Lightning flashed in the distance, turning the street silver for a heartbeat. Manny stepped back from the car, the photo still gripped in his hand. He saw the confession. Saw Daniel give it all up. But he's not afraid, Slade added. Because he knows something you don't. Manny swallowed hard. What? Slade slid a slim envelope onto the passenger seat. Proof. But be warned, it changes everything. This isn't just about prison. It's about blood. About legacy. About who you really are. Manny hesitated, then slowly opened the door and slid inside. The envelope sat between them like a ticking bomb. He opened it. Inside were documents. Birth records. Medical files. Legal papers. All old. Yellowed. At the top of one file, State of Texas, Child Custody Agreement sealed. Another read. Emmanuel Carter, adoption revoked. Manny flipped to the last page and stopped breathing. A signature. William King. And beneath it, legal father. No, Manny whispered. That's not true. Slade didn't look away. It is. Manny's voice shook. He signed away custody. Why? To protect his name. His fortune. He wanted Daniel to be the only heir. But when your mother refused to sign the same deal, she conveniently died in that car crash. And you, Slade leaned back. They buried you with a fake last name and dumped you in the system. Manny stared down at the papers, his mind spinning, the walls of the car pressing in on him. I was his son, his actual son. And he erased you, Slade said softly. But now the world knows the frontman was a fraud, which means William will come out of the shadows to take back control. Manny laughed bitterly, voice tight. He won't face me. He's a coward. Slade didn't smile. He won't face you, Manny. He'll erase you again. And this time not with lies. Silence fell. Then the car turned a corner and pulled into a dim underground parking garage beneath an old courthouse. Waiting there was Lily. She ran to the car before it even stopped, banging on the window. "Turn on the news," she gasped. "Now." Manny rolled it down. "What happened?" She held up her phone, her face pale. It was already trending. Breaking. Daniel King found unconscious in jail cell, suspected poisoning. Manny felt the air leave his lungs. Slade whispered, "He's making his move." "No," Manny growled, shaking his head. "Not like this." He grabbed the envelope and stormed past him toward the stairwell, Lily running to keep up. "Where are you going?" she shouted. "To the top," he said without looking back. "If he built a kingdom of lies, I'm going to burn it to the ground." Later that night, in a marble estate deep in the Texas hills, William King stood alone in his library, swirling a glass of scotch. The walls were lined with portraits of past kings, judges, senators, landowners, all pale, all powerful. He turned the TV off mid-report. "Damn fool," he muttered. "I told him to keep his mouth shut." Behind him, a man stepped out of the shadows. "We have a problem, sir." "I know," William said coldly. "The boy. He's not staying quiet." William smirked. They never do until they're reminded why silence is survival. He placed his drink on the table. "Send the order." "To do what exactly?" William turned slowly, his voice ice. "Erase him. This time permanently." The man nodded once and vanished. "And William?" He turned to a locked drawer, opened it. Inside, under velvet cloth, was a gun. Beside it, a photo. A baby, cradled in the arms of a woman with dreadlocks and a fire behind her eyes. And standing in the corner of that same photo, a younger William King, looking straight at the camera, like he knew this day would come. And outside, storm clouds began to gather.